Well, the front cover image of your bulletin today from the UCC says bold moves, because both of our readings this morning from both the Old Testament and the New Testament are about biblical characters who made bold moves. So the first scripture reading from Genesis, which Reverend Fred read for us, was the famous story of Joseph and his brothers, and how Joseph is betrayed by his brothers, but Joseph remains bold and persistent in his faith. He trusts in God and he doesn't give up. Now, most of you are familiar of that story of Joseph and his brothers because of the very popular 20th century musical, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And that's why Peter Black played for his prelude this morning the song Close Every Door, which is from that musical. But I think the New Testament reading, which I read for you this morning, may be a new one for some of you. I found that most pastors don't tend to talk about this story of Jesus and the Canaanite woman very much, because in it, Jesus is kind of a jerk. This woman comes to him in great need. Her daughter is, in the vernacular of their day, tormented by a demon. Now, I've shared with you before, when we read this in the Bible, it doesn't mean that someone is being possessed by a red guy with horns and a pitchfork. Okay? The ancient people obviously did not understand lots of illnesses, especially mental illnesses. They didn't understand how they were caused, so they said the person was possessed by a demon. But she comes to Jesus in great need. My daughter needs help. Please help me. And you see that Jesus dismisses her, like waves his hand and says, "Get away from me, woman." But the woman makes a bold move. She's persistent. She keeps following him. It was a very bold move for a woman to speak back to a man in Jesus' day. And it was a very bold move for a Canaanite, a non-Jewish person, to speak back to a Jewish person. So she pursues Jesus. And Jesus says, "I haven't come for you. I have only come for the children of Israel. You're not a Jew. I haven't come for you." And then he really insults her. He says, "Why would I take this spiritual food that is meant for the children of Israel, and why would I give it to a dog?" Now, I know that we love our dogs today. But during Jesus' day, dogs were not kept as pets. They roamed the streets, and the Jewish people considered them to be very dirty and unclean. So to call someone a dog was a great insult. And so you can see why a lot of pastors don't want to talk about this story, because Jesus is so cruel and rude and dismissive. Why is he doing that? This isn't the loving, compassionate Jesus that we're used to seeing. Well, some theologians have speculated that Jesus is doing this merely to test the woman. He wants to see how strong her faith is. But I tend to agree with what Reverend Ed Townley said in our words of integration and guidance this morning, that Jesus wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. Now, I know some Christians think that Jesus was perfect from the time he was born a baby in the manger. He was without sin. He couldn't make any mistakes. He knew he was the Son of God from when he was a baby. But Reverend Townley says the Gospels only make sense if we see a Jesus who is learning more and more about his divine nature as his ministry unfolds. So yes, in his encounter with the Canaanite woman, at that point in his spiritual understanding about himself and his ministry, he thought it was only for Jewish males. But because of her boldness and persistence, Jesus himself has a change of heart and mind. Because if you keep reading the Gospels after this story, Jesus shows much more kindness and compassion to people who aren't Jewish, and especially to women. So because of the boldness of this woman, Jesus is transformed. He comes to a greater understanding. I don't know about you, I love that Jesus is fully human, that he made mistakes. We see him in the Gospels showing fear, showing anger. I like that because it makes me know that he understands everything that I'm going through because he lived it himself as a human being. Now, I have shared with you before, one of my favorite contemporary Christian writers, her name is Anne Lamott. If you haven't read, yes, woo. If you haven't read any of her books, I highly recommend that you do. But in one of her books, Anne Lamott says this: God sent Jesus to join the human experience, which means to make a lot of mistakes. Jesus didn't arrive here knowing everything. He had to learn how to walk. He had fingers and toes, confusion, sexual feelings, crazy human internal pressures. He had the same prejudices as the rest of his tribe. He had to learn that the Canaanite woman was a person. He had to suffer the hardships and the tedium and the setbacks of being a regular person. If he hadn't, the incarnation would mean nothing. Jesus made mistakes, and he had the same prejudices as the people of his tribe. Jesus was a Jewish male. And so, yes, he was raised thinking that people who were not Jewish and that women were people who were less than. But through his experience with the Canaanite woman and with others, he begins to have a change of mind and heart and to understand more fully who he is and what his mission and ministry will be. So not only does he experience a transformation, but of course the Canaanite woman also experiences a transformation and a healing because her daughter is healed. But notice in the story, Jesus didn't say, "Woman, because of your persistence, I have healed your daughter." He doesn't take credit for the healing. In fact, never in the Gospels, when someone is healed, does Jesus ever take credit for it. He says just what he says to the Canaanite woman. He always says, "Your faith has made you well. Your belief has made you whole. It shall be done to you as you believe." So the same is true for us. If we want to experience healing and transformation in our own lives, it's done to us as we believe. It's all about the power of our faith, of our belief, of our thinking. Now, I know if you've been treated like the Canaanite woman, if you are right now feeling like you're not being heard, people are not listening to you, if you feel like you've been dismissed, that people are talking down to you, that you're invisible, or if you're experiencing that someone in your family right now is going through a health crisis, it's difficult when you're feeling that way to have the belief that miracles are on their way. It's hard to remain persistent and bold in faith when you're feeling that way. But that's why prayer is so important. It's why I talk almost every single Sunday about the importance of prayer. I've shared with you before, I call the chair where I meditate each day my recharging station. Because you know how your phone, when it's getting depleted and the bars are getting smaller, you've got to plug it into the power. And that's how I feel about that chair. When I'm feeling depleted, when I'm feeling hopeless, when I'm feeling unheard and hurt, I can sit in that chair and I can be filled with the power and the presence of God. So I'm so grateful for prayer in my life, but I'm also grateful to be a part of a spiritual community such as this. For when I'm feeling depleted in my faith, when I am finding it hard to believe, to find the courage to be bold, you lift me up. You give me that strength and courage that I need. Prayer and spiritual community are such a big part of our spiritual lives. And so, my friends, I would like to invite you this week to find time each and every day to plug in to the power of your belief, to believe more fully in God, in one another, and in yourself. And I'm going to leave you with the words from 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13. It says, "Be strong, be bold, be courageous, stand firm in faith, and in everything you do, do it with great love." Namaste.
Hello, everybody. This is Sal Sapienza, and I'm so excited to share with all of you that I've written a brand new book. The book is called Childish Thinking: How the Church Keeps Us Stuck in Sunday School. Now, the title Childish Thinking comes from Christian scripture, where we hear that if we wish to grow in spiritual understanding, then we must let go of childish ways of thinking. And yet so many Christians today, even after years of Bible study and Sunday services, still have a very elementary understanding of their faith. They still understand God as some old man with a long gray beard. They think heaven is a place up in the clouds with pearly gates, that the devil is some red guy with horns and a pitchfork, and that hell is a fiery place below the earth. Those are things that we tell children. None of those descriptions appear anywhere in the Bible. And so in Childish Thinking, I try to dispel many of those misnomers, and I explore topics such as God, Jesus, heaven, hell, sin, prayer, and resurrection from the higher perspectives of ancient Christian mystics and contemporary progressive theologians. After each chapter, there are prayers for quiet contemplation and questions for personal reflection and journal writing. Come learn how you can let go of old ways of thinking and begin to see things with new eyes. Come and learn how you can finally graduate from Sunday school. The book is available now on Amazon, and you can read the entire introduction at childishthinking.faith.